He would tell himself later that he should have kept driving, that stopping the wagon that morning was the first mistake he couldn't undo. They had her tied in the square like a warning nailed to wood. 3 women offered up while the sheriff smiled and said, "Pick any woman." Silas felt the town lean forward, hungry for order that looked like entertainment. He was already turning away, until 2 small hands gripped his coat, and his daughters whispered the one thing he couldn't outrun. "Papa, that's her." Snow cut sideways. A bell waited to ring. Somewhere ahead lay sermons, papers, judges, and a road that would demand more truth than a man could afford. Choosing her would put his children in the crosshairs, turn neighbors into witnesses, and make mercy cost blood and land. Not choosing her would be worse. He stepped forward anyway. What no one noticed, what even Silas missed, was that the rope marks on her wrists were newer than the night they claimed she'd killed her husband. If you want to see how one choice broke a town and built a family, subscribe, watch to the end, and comment your city below so I know how far this story travels. The rope bit into her wrists until the skin turned the color of old bruises. She didn't sag. She didn't beg. She stood with her chin up while the wind shoved grit across the town square, and the crowd leaned in like they'd paid for seats. 3 women were tied to posts, 3 different kinds of broken. One sobbed into her sleeve. One stared at the ground as if she could fall through it. The third, dark hair tangled, cheekbones split, eyes steady, kept looking past the people, past the wooden storefronts hung with sparse evergreen, past the crooked church steeple where a single bell waited for Christmas Eve. Sheriff Caldwell Crowe stepped onto the platform as if it were a stage built for him. His badge caught the winter sun and threw it back in everyone's faces. He tipped his hat to the men first, then to the women who stood behind them, hands clasped tight around shopping baskets and prayers they wouldn't speak out loud. "Pick any woman you want," he called, spreading his hands like he was offering sacks of flour. "Town's generous today." Laughter moved through the crowd, thin and nervous, like it didn't want to be caught laughing. A boy by the trough shoved his elbow into his friend's ribs to get a better view. Someone tossed a crust of bread that bounced off the sobbing woman's shoulder. Nobody told the boy to stop. Nobody told the sheriff to stop. The wagon wheels hit a rut at the edge of the square and jolted hard. Silas Mercer tightened the reins, the leather creaking under his gloves. The 2 little girls in the back bounced and grabbed the plank to steady themselves. He'd planned to be in and out, feed, kerosene, a bolt of cloth for mending. He'd planned to keep his head down and not let the town's sickness touch his ranch. It touched him anyway. "Papa!" Willa's voice snapped, sharp as a twig under boot. Clary's hand slid into his coat sleeve and clamped down, small fingers finding the spot above his wrist like she'd practiced it in nightmares. Silas pulled the team to a stop so fast, the horse stamped and snorted steam. He should have kept driving. Willa climbed onto the seat rail, standing to see over the men. Her twin braids whipped in the wind. Her eyes went wide, not with curiosity, not with fear, the way a child fears loud thunder, but with recognition that landed like a stone in a well. "Papa," she said again, lower now, as if speaking too loud could break something holy. "That's her." Silas didn't turn his head at first. He kept his gaze fixed on the sheriff, because men like Crowe smelled hesitation, the way wolves smelled blood. But the tug on his sleeve tightened. Clary's breath came in quick, white puffs against his cuff. "That's her," Clary whispered. The snow lady. Silas let his eyes slide. Just enough. The third woman. The one who wasn't crying. The one who looked like she'd been dragged through winter and decided winter didn't get to keep her. Her coat was gone. Someone had taken it. Her dress was torn at the hem, stained at the knee with dried mud, and something darker. A greenish blanket was knotted around her shoulders like it had been thrown there as an afterthought, the color of pine boughs left too long in frost. Willa leaned forward, voice trembling at the edges but firm in the middle. She gave us the blanket, the green one. She sang it. Clary's lips moved, and a hum slipped out, almost silent. A child's tune. Simple. 3 notes, then a dip, then back up like a star rising over a river. Silas felt the hair lift on his arms under his coat. He'd heard it before. Not from the church choir, not from the saloon piano. From the back of his own wagon, on a night when the wind had tried to pry the roof off his house, and the girls had woken screaming because their mother was gone, and the world was cold, and God felt far away. Clary had hummed that tune while Silas sat on the floor between their beds, his back against the wall, his shotgun across his lap, and he had no idea where she'd learned it. He'd chalked it up to children dreaming. Now the tune had a face. Sheriff Crow's voice rolled again. We ain't got room for murderers and whores, but we got plenty of mercy if a man's willing to take responsibility. The word mercy sounded wrong in his mouth, like a hymn sung in a gambling hall. A man in the front, broad shoulders, red cheeks from whiskey, shouted, "Let me see the brunette." Crow smiled. "Step on up then." 2 deputies cut a rope. One of the women stumbled forward, nearly falling. The crowd surged, hungry for the next bite. The third woman didn't move, didn't flinch. She watched Crow the way a person watches a snake, not because they admire it, but because they know exactly what it can do. Silas's fingers tightened on the reins until the leather cut into the seam of his glove. "Papa?" Willa said, and her small hand landed on his shoulder, heavy with the kind of weight children shouldn't carry. "If we don't—" Clary didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. She just pressed her forehead into his arm, and the humming stopped as if she was saving breath for something worse. Silas's mind went to his ranch. Fences, hay stacked in the loft, the one window that never latched right. He thought of the girls asleep with their mouths open, trusting the world to keep them safe. He thought of his wife's grave under the cottonwood, the snow that had buried the last bouquet he'd brought her, the way the preacher had said, "The Lord gives and the Lord takes away," and Silas had wanted to ask what kind of God needed taking. Crow turned his head, scanning the square. His gaze found Silas's wagon like it was always going to. "Mr. Mercer," Crow called, too friendly, too loud. "Didn't expect to see you in town today." A few heads turned. A few men muttered Silas's name like it tasted sour. Widower, rancher, keeps to himself, thinks he's better. Silas didn't tip his hat back. He kept it low, shadowing his eyes. "Sheriff?" Crow's smile widened as if the title pleased him. "Town's offering you a Christmas blessing. Pick any woman you want. Take her home. Feed her. Pray over her. Make her honest." The crowd chuckled again, and somewhere near the church steps, a woman crossed herself so quickly it looked like a nervous tick. Silas climbed down from the wagon. His boots hit the dirt with a final sound. He didn't look at his girls when he spoke. He spoke to them anyway. "Stay put." Willa shook her head once, stubborn as a mule. Clary's hand clung to the wood rail until her knuckles went pale. Silas walked forward. The crowd parted in front of him, not out of respect, but out of the instinct to make room for trouble. Someone muttered, "He's got no business." Someone else said, "Let him, he'll learn." Crow leaned over the platform rail as Silas approached. Up close, the sheriff smelled like clean leather and peppermint, like he'd just come from a parlor instead of a jail cell. His glove was spotless. That was the first wrong detail. A lawman's glove shouldn't stay that clean in a town that ran on mud and blood. "You sure you want to get involved, Silas?" Crow asked softly, so only the front row could hear. "You got two little ones, ranch to run. Winter's hard enough without inviting more hardship." Silas didn't answer the warning. He looked past Crow, past the deputies, to the woman at the far post. She met his gaze without blinking. Her mouth didn't move, but he saw it anyway. Saw the shape of a word she refused to speak. No. Not as in no mercy. No as in no ownership. Clary's humming started again behind him, faint as breath on Chant's glass. Silas raised his hand and pointed. "I'll take her." The square froze for a heartbeat. Even the wind seemed to hold back. Crow's eyes narrowed, then brightened, like a man delighted by a good joke. "Her?" he repeated, louder now. "You want the one nobody else wants?" "I said her." A ripple moved through the men, not disgust, something closer to fear, as if choosing the wrong woman might bring a curse to Silas's doorstep. Crow stepped to the edge of the platform, lifting his voice so the whole town could taste the moment. "Mr. Mercer chooses the accused." He savored the last word. The deputies hesitated. One reached for the rope at her wrists. The woman didn't plead, didn't thank. She held still, eyes on Silas, as if measuring what kind of cage he planned to be. The deputy cut the rope. She swayed, knees locking at the last second. Silas moved before she hit the dirt, catching her by the elbow, firm, not possessive, like a man catching a falling tool before it breaks. Her skin was cold through the torn fabric, too cold for someone standing under sun. Crow leaned in, close enough for Silas to smell the peppermint again. "She's yours now," the sheriff said, voice slick as oil. Her choices ended when she raised a hand against her husband. "If she runs, you answer. If she screams, you calm her. If she lies—" Crow's smile sharpened. "You'll learn." Silas didn't look at Crow. He shrugged his coat off and set it around the woman's shoulders. The wool swallowed her thin frame. For the first time, her eyes flickered, down to the coat, then back up, like she didn't know whether to accept warmth if it came with a chain. Silas fastened the front, careful not to touch her throat where purple marks climbed under her jaw. "Ma'am," he said, not soft, not hard, just steady. "Can you walk?" Her breath caught. Then she nodded once. Behind them, Willa had climbed down from the wagon despite his order. She stood in the open with her fists clenched, daring the world to correct her. Clary stayed on the plank, but her eyes were wet and wide, the humming trembling into silence. Crow raised his hands again to the crowd, feeding them the next line of the show. "Christmas in Briar Hollow," he announced. "A man takes in a sinner. Ain't God good?" Somewhere near the church door, Preacher Amos Bell stepped out, his Bible tucked under his arm. He didn't speak. He just watched, jaw tight, as if words might make him complicit. Silas guided the woman toward the wagon. The crowd shifted, murmuring, close enough that a shoulder brushed his sleeve. He felt the pressure of bodies, the weight of a town that believed it could decide what a person was worth. The woman stumbled once. Silas tightened his grip, and she steadied. She didn't lean into him. She didn't pull away. She moved like someone walking a line over a canyon. At the wagon, Willa stepped forward first. Her small hand reached for the woman's sleeve. "You're safe," Willa said, as if saying it could make it true. The woman looked at Willa's hand, tiny, clean, trusting. Something tightened in her face. Not tears, not yet. Just a crack in the iron. "Don't promise what you can't keep," the woman said, voice rough from cold and silence. Willa didn't flinch. "Papa keeps things." Silas lifted his daughter into the wagon without taking his eyes off the square. He set her beside Clary, then helped the woman up. She climbed like every rung might be pulled away. When she sat, she kept her hands in her lap where everyone could see them, as if she'd learned that hidden hands meant punishment. Silas climbed to the driver's bench and took the reins. Crow's voice followed him, casual as a farewell. "Bring her by for Sunday service, Mr. Mercer. Folks like to see a sinner repent." Silas clicked his tongue, and the horses strained forward. He didn't look back, but he felt the eyes on his spine. He felt the sheriff's smile like a sight on a rifle. He felt the town's hunger shifting from the posts to his wagon. Beside him, the woman's breath came shallow. In the back, Clary started humming again. 3 notes, then a dip, then up, small as a prayer, stubborn as faith. Silas stared at the road ahead, the line of white hills beyond town, and he made a decision without saying it out loud. He would get them home. And if God was watching this Christmas, God would have to decide what kind of man Silas Mercer was going to be. The wagon cleared the last storefront, and the sound of the square fell away, replaced by the steady creak of wood and the horse's breath. Snow thinned to dust along the road. The church bell did not ring. It waited, like a held breath that might never come. Silas kept his eyes on the ruts ahead. He drove like a man who knew the road could turn on him if he gave it a chance. Behind him, the girls shifted. Willa sat straight, chin lifted, as if daring the town to follow. Clary tucked her hands under her thighs and pressed her boots together, the way she did when she was afraid of making noise. The woman sat between them, hands folded, knuckles still marked by rope. She didn't look back at the square. She didn't look at Silas either. She watched the road's edge where snow gave way to frozen weeds, counting something only she could see. A stone came out of nowhere and struck the wagon's side. It clattered down and vanished under the wheel. Silas did not turn. He clicked his tongue once. The horses leaned into the traces. Another stone bounced off the tailgate. Then a shout, half a laugh, half a curse, floated after them and died. Willa twisted around. "Papa?" Silas shook his head once. Enough. She understood and faced forward again. They rolled past the last house. The land opened. Wind rose and pressed against the wagon like a shoulder testing strength. "I'm not staying," the woman said. Her voice cut clean. No apology, no challenge, just a statement. Silas nodded without looking at her. "We'll talk when we're clear." "I won't bring trouble to your children," she said. "I won't make you answer for me." Clary looked up. He answers anyway. The woman's mouth tightened. She closed her eyes for a beat, then opened them and fixed on the horse's ears. Papa keeps things, Willa added, as if building a fence with words. Silas felt the weight of that settle on his shoulders. He didn't shrug it off. They drove another mile before he spoke again. You can walk? Yes. You hurt bad? I've been worse. That told him enough. He guided the team off the road at a bend where the cottonwoods leaned close, branches clacking together like bones. He set the brake and climbed down. The woman waited until he reached the back. She did not offer her hands. She stood when he nodded. The ground took her weight, and she swayed once. Silas steadied her elbow again. Same grip. Same distance. Sit, he said, and pointed to a fallen log out of the wind. She sat. Snow creaked under her boots. Her breath came shallow. Silas knelt and loosened the knot at her wrists where the blanket had been tied. He did it slowly, keeping his hands where she could see them. Ma'am, he said. Name. She hesitated. The wind slipped through the trees and rattled the log. Somewhere a crow laughed. Vivian, she said at last. Vivi. Silas nodded. Silas Mercer. I know. He didn't ask. How? He stood and took his coat from her shoulders, folding it once. He draped it back over her, tighter this time, and tied the sleeves at her waist so it wouldn't slip. She allowed it. That mattered. Why? She asked. Silas met her eyes. My girls saw you first. Vivi followed his gaze to the wagon. Clary had leaned out, humming under her breath. Willa watched the trees, scanning. The snow, Vivi said. Not a question. Silas waited. I don't remember all of it, Vivi went on. Pieces. Cold. Singing because silence was worse. She swallowed. If they remember me, it means I lived. Silas thought of the nights he'd paced the floor with a gun and no answers. They remember. He helped her up. She moved carefully, but she moved. That mattered too. Back on the road, the sky thickened. Snow began to fall in earnest, soft at first, then heavier, flakes slanting sideways. Christmas is tomorrow, Clary said, as if reminding the world of an appointment. Silas glanced back. It is. We're supposed to light the candle, Willa said. We will. Vivi listened. Your wife... She stopped. Silas did not correct her. He did not fill the space. He drove. The ranch rose out of the white like a held breath finally let go. Fence lines bent under snow. The house stood dark but solid, a rectangle of shelter the way shelter should be. Silas pulled the wagon close and jumped down. He opened the door and heat slipped out, thin but real. He lit the lamp and set it high. Light cut a warm circle through the cold. Inside, he said. Vivi hesitated on the threshold. The girls brushed past her without fear, boots thudding, laughter bursting and dying as quickly as it came. Willa dropped her scarf on the chair. Clary went straight to the stove and held her hands out, palms open. Vivi stepped in last. She stood just inside, as if the floor might give way. Silas took her coat. He did not hang it. He set it over the chair nearest the stove. Sit. She sat. He filled a kettle and set it on the fire. He took bread down from the shelf and cut it thick. He poured broth. He placed the bowl in front of her and slid the spoon to her hand. She stared at it. "Eat," he said, slow. She took the spoon. Her hand shook. She steadied it against the bowl and ate. Clary hummed. Willa watched. A knock came. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Silas's hand went to the shotgun by the door. He did not raise it. He moved to the door and opened it a crack. Doc Pike stood on the step, hat pulled low, snow on his shoulders. He did not look past Silas. He waited. "Evening," Doc said. "Evening." "I heard." Silas nodded. "Come in." Doc stepped inside and shut the door behind him. He took off his hat and set it down. He saw Vivi's wrists and said nothing. He saw the girls and smiled, quick and soft. "Sit," Silas told him, and poured another cup. Doc knelt in front of Vivi without asking. He examined the marks with the same care he'd use on a horse's leg. He pressed here, noted there. His face tightened once. "You're lucky," Doc said. Vivi met his eyes. "I don't believe in luck." Doc nodded. "Me neither." He finished and stood. "You need rest, heat, quiet." He looked at Silas and guards. "I'll manage." Doc hesitated, then spoke low. "Crow won't let this lie." Silas met his gaze. "I know." Doc put his hat back on. At the door, he paused. "Christmas," he said, like it meant something that could still be claimed. "Christmas," Silas answered. After Doc left, the house settled. Snow thickened outside. The stove popped. Vivi pushed the bowl away, half empty. "I won't sleep in your bed." Silas shook his head. "Spare room." She stood too fast and wavered. He caught her elbow again. She did not pull away this time. The spare room was small and clean. He lit the lamp and set it low. He brought extra blankets and laid them out without touching her. He pointed to the latch. "You can lock it." She nodded. As he turned to leave, she spoke. "Thank you." Silas paused at the door. "Rest." He closed it gently. In the main room, Willa sat at the table, hands flat, thinking. Clary leaned against Silas's leg, warm and trusting. "Papa," Willa said, "they'll come." Silas rested his hand on her head. "Let them." He checked the latch. He banked the fire. He set the candle by the window where the pine bough hung. Outside, snow erased the road back to town. Inside, the flame held. God, he thought. Not as a prayer, not exactly. Watch this. Night pressed its face to the windows. Snow thickened, the kind that swallowed tracks and sound alike. The ranch settled into a quiet that felt earned, not given. Silas moved through the house without hurry. He checked the latch on the spare room once, just once, then left it alone. He set the shotgun by the door, muzzle down. He slid the bar across the back window and listened. The wind answered. Nothing else. Clary dozed on the rug by the stove. Her thumb curled against her palm. Willa stayed awake, eyes bright, counting shadows as if they were numbers she might need later. "You should sleep," Silas said. "I will," Willa said, and did not. He poured water and rinsed the bowl Vivi had used, then set it upside down to dry. He wiped the table clean with the edge of a cloth and folded the cloth square. He lit the candle by the window and tucked a sprig of evergreen beneath it. The flame bent, then steadied. Christmas Eve, he thought, or close enough to matter. A sound came from the spare room. Wood creaking, a breath pulled too sharp. Silas stopped where he stood. He waited. The sound passed. He went on. He laid another log on the fire. Sparks jumped and died. The front gate rattled once. Willa looked up. Silas raised a finger. Quiet. The rattle came again, lighter this time, as if whoever stood there had decided not to make a show of it. Silas took the shotgun and moved to the door. He opened it a crack. Deputy Nate Holloway stood on the step, hat in his hands, snow crusting his shoulders. He did not smile. "Evening," Nate said. Silas didn't move. "You lost?" Nate shook his head. "I won't stay." Silas watched his eyes. Young, tired, honest enough to be dangerous. "Sheriff sent you?" Silas asked. Nate swallowed. "Sheriff's sleeping." That was answer enough. "I heard you took her," Nate said, keeping his voice low. "I heard you took the one nobody would." Silas said nothing. Nate shifted his weight. "I'm supposed to tell you she's to present herself on Sunday. Service. For repentance." Silas leaned against the doorframe. "Supposed to?" Nate nodded once. "I didn't come for that." Silas waited. Nate glanced toward the spare room, then back. "You should keep your lamp low. Sheriff notices light." Silas considered the boy. "Anything else?" Nate hesitated, then spoke fast, like ripping a bandage. "If there's trouble, it won't start with shouting. It'll start with paper, orders, complaints, folks who say they didn't mean to say it but did." Silas nodded. "Go home." Nate put his hat back on. At the step, he paused. "Merry Christmas," he said, as if the words might bruise. Silas closed the door and slid the bar home. Willa exhaled. "He's scared." "He should be," Silas said. They waited until Clary stirred. Silas lifted her without waking her and laid her in her bed. He pulled the quilt up to her chin. He stood there a moment longer than necessary in the spare room. Vivi sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, listening to the house breathe. She had locked the door, then unlocked it again. She could not remember which felt safer. She touched her wrists. The marks were darker now. She pressed until pain replaced thought. She remembered cold. Not the cold of air, but the cold of time. Hours that refused to pass. She remembered singing because silence let fear grow teeth. She remembered green, a blanket pulled from somewhere she could not name. She did not remember faces. The latch clicked softly outside her door. Not opening, just checking. She stood and went to the door anyway. "Mr. Mercer," she said through the wood. "Yes." "If I leave before morning." "No," he said, not raised, not sharp. "You won't." A pause, then quieter. "You can if you must. Not before." She rested her forehead against the door. "They'll come." I know. Your girls, I know. Silence settled between them, a thing that did not demand. Thank you, she said again, and this time the word cracked. Silas stepped back. He did not answer. Morning came gray and heavy. Snow had erased the road clean. The gate stood rimed white, as if the night had tried to lock it from the outside. Silas rose early and fed the horses. He checked the fence line and found no cuts. He came back in with cold on his beard. Vivi stood by the stove when he returned, wrapped in a spare sweater, hair braided neat. She had cleaned the table and set bread out to warm. She stopped when she saw him, hands hovering like she didn't know what to do with them. You didn't have to, he said. I needed to, she said. He nodded. They ate in quiet. The girls watched Vivi the way children watch weather. Alert, hopeful. After, Silas brought out a bucket and water. Let me see. Vivi stiffened. I'm fine. Let me see. She extended her wrists. He washed them gently and wrapped them clean. He did not linger. He did not ask questions. When he was done, she flexed her fingers like a pianist testing keys. Doc was right, she said. I'm lucky. Luck doesn't tie knots, Silas said. She smiled, brief and surprised. They worked without speaking. Vivi mended a tear in Clary's coat with small, exact stitches. Willa swept. Silas split wood. The house warmed in layers. A wagon passed on the road and did not stop. Another followed an hour later, slower, then moved on. By noon, the sky lifted just enough to show blue at the edges. At dusk, the church bell rang at last. Once, then again. Christmas Eve, claiming its place. Silas set the candle by the window and lit it. The flame wavered, then steadied. They stood together, the four of them, close enough to share warmth. Vivi folded her hands the way she had been taught long ago. She had learned the words before she learned the fear. Silas cleared his throat. He did not preach. He said one line, plain as bread. Lord, he said, keep what we've been given. Clary hummed. Willa bowed her head. Outside, snow fell softer now. The ranch held. From the spare room, Vivi's breath slowed. She watched the flame and thought of a river under stars. And for the first time since the rope, she believed she might wake up tomorrow and still be here. Tieptuk fan sao. The sound came before the knock. A horse blown hard, hooves skidding on frozen ground. Then the knock. Firm, measured, meant to be heard, but not answered in haste. Silas was already on his feet. He took the shotgun from behind the door and held it low. The girls froze where they stood. Vivi felt the room tighten and knew this sound. She had heard it in another life, on another porch, when winter had pressed close and men had brought the law with them like a club. Stay, Silas said, to no one and everyone. He opened the door a hand's width. Sheriff Crow stood in the snow, coat buttoned clean, hat brim dusted white. Two deputies waited back by the gate, reins loose, eyes anywhere but here. Mr. Mercer, Crow said, voice warm as if it belonged indoors. Christmas morning. Thought I'd come by with a word. Silas didn't move. Say it from there. Crow smiled. I'll say it plain then. She's required to present herself tomorrow. Service. Public repentance. It's for her own good. Silas felt the pressure behind his ribs. He did not let it reach his voice. "You've said that already." Crow leaned closer to the doorframe, peering past Silas into the room. His eyes found the candle by the window, the evergreen tucked beneath it, the girls standing together like a line drawn in chalk. "And for theirs," Crow added lightly. Vivi stepped forward. She placed her hands where Crow could see them. "I'll go," she said. Silas turned. "No." She didn't look at him. "It ends things faster." Crow's smile widened, pleased. "See? A woman who knows her place." Silas raised the shotgun a fraction, not aiming, not threatening, just enough to change the air. "Get off my step," he said. Crow's eyes flicked to the barrel and back. The smile thinned. "Tomorrow," he said. "After the bell." He stepped away, boots crunching. At the gate, he paused. "You keep a nice ranch, Mercer. Shame if talk turned it sour." Silas closed the door and slid the bar home. He leaned his forehead against the wood for one breath and then straightened. Willa exhaled. "He thinks he owns tomorrow." Silas met her eyes. "He doesn't." Vivi stood where she was, hands still open. "I'll go," she said again, quieter now. "If I don't, he'll come harder. He'll bring paper, orders, men who don't knock." "I know," Silas said. She swallowed. "I won't let your children pay for me." Silas looked at her wrists, newly wrapped, then at the girls, then back. "We'll decide together." I should have kept driving. The thought came uninvited and left as quickly as it arrived. They ate little. The candle burned low. Snow eased. When the girls slept, Silas sat at the table and cleaned his shotgun, slow and thorough. Vivi watched from the doorway. She spoke without preface. He didn't shoot him by accident. Silas did not look up. "Tell me." Vivi came closer and sat opposite him. She folded her hands. Her voice stayed level, like she was reading from a ledger she'd memorized. "He came to the house drunk. Again. He pushed me down the stairs. Again." She paused. "I grabbed the poker." He laughed. Silas set a piece down, listened. Crow was outside. He'd been there before, watching, waiting. Vivi's mouth tightened. "He shot him through the window. Said it was to save me. Said I owed him my life." Silas felt the table edge bite into his palm. "He said mercy had a price," Vivi went on. "I said no." The words sat between them, heavy. "He smiled," she said. "Then he changed the story." Silas nodded once. He did not ask how. He did not ask why the town believed. He knew how stories traveled when men like Crow pushed them. "They tied me the next morning," Vivi finished. "They asked me to confess. I didn't." Silas assembled the gun and set it aside. "Tomorrow," he said. "You won't go alone." She shook her head. "You'll lose." "Maybe." Silence pressed in. Then softer. "But not today." Morning came with brittle light. The snow had crusted overnight, a thin shell over deep drift. The road toward town looked smooth and false. Silas fed the horses. He checked the fence again. He did not saddle. Inside, Vivi dressed in the plainest thing she owned. She braided her hair tight. She wrapped the green blanket around her shoulders and tied it firm. "Why that one?" Silas asked. She met his gaze. Because it's mine. Clary watched, eyes bright. We'll sit in the back. No, Vivi said. You'll sit where you always sit. Willa squared her shoulders. Front. They loaded the wagon together. Silas climbed to the bench and took the reins. The horses leaned forward, eager to move. At the gate, he stopped. You don't have to, he said to Vivi. She nodded. I know. They rolled toward town. Halfway there, another wagon joined behind them. Then another, farther back. People with baskets and faces set for church. No one waved. No one turned away. The bell rang once as they entered the square. Crow stood near the steps, hat tipped, hands clasped like a man welcoming guests. Silas drew up short of the crowd. He did not get down. He did not move aside. Crow's smile faltered. Morning, Silas said. Crow's gaze flicked to the girls. Children shouldn't see this. They see plenty, Silas said. Vivi stood and climbed down. The crowd parted just enough. She walked to the steps and stopped. She did not kneel. Crow opened his mouth. Before you speak, Silas said, I'll speak. The murmur rose. The preacher shifted. Crow's eyes hardened. Silas climbed down and stood beside Vivi. He did not touch her. He did not block her. He stood. This woman won't confess to what she didn't do, Silas said. She won't be sold as mercy. If you want her, you come through me. Crow laughed, sharp. This ain't a trial. No, Silas said. It's a show. The word landed wrong. A ripple moved through the people. Crow lifted his hands. You're out of your depth, Mercer. Maybe. From the back a voice rose. Let the children speak. It was small, trembling. Clary. Willa took her hand and stepped forward with her. The crowd shifted, uncertain now. Papa, Willa said loud enough. We know her. Crow scoffed. Children's tales. Clary began to hum. The tune cut through the square like a blade through cloth. Simple. True. Heads turned. Someone near the well whispered, I heard that song. Vivi closed her eyes. The river rose behind her eyelids. Stars scattered. Silas felt the moment teeter. He knew this was not the end. He knew paper and orders would follow. He knew Crow would not fall today. But he also knew this. Not today. The bell rang again, late. And for the first time, the crowd did not laugh. The bell's echo thinned and broke apart over the square. People shifted their weight, the way they did when a wind changed direction. No one stepped forward. No one stepped back. Crow recovered first. He always did. Church, he said, smoothing the front of his coat. We'll proceed. The preacher cleared his throat and opened his book. He did not look at Vivi. He did not look at Silas either. He looked at the words like they might shield him. Silas stayed where he was. He did not bow his head. He did not remove his hat. Crow noticed. You planning to stand through the sermon too, Mercer? Silas didn't answer. The preacher began to read. His voice wavered, steadied, wavered again. Mercy, obedience, order. Familiar words, worn thin by use. Vivi listened without moving. The green blanket rested on her shoulders like a claim she refused to surrender. Her hands were steady now. That frightened her more than fear ever had. From the edge of the square, a man coughed. Another shifted his feet. A woman pressed her lips together and stared at the ground. The crowd breathed as one body that didn't know whether to run or kneel. Crow waited until the reading ended. "Now," he said, stepping forward, "we'll hear a confession." "No," Silas said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Crow's smile showed teeth. "This isn't your affair." Silas took one step closer to Vivi. Still no touch. "It became mine when you sold it." A ripple moved again, stronger this time. Crow lifted his hand. "Sheriff's authority isn't God's," Willa said. The word hung there, bright and dangerous. Crow turned. "Little girl." "She's right," someone said. A woman near the feed store. "Ba Ruth," Silas realized. Her hands shook, but her voice held. Crow's eyes narrowed. "Ruth, best mind your business." She swallowed. "I am." Crow scanned the square. He counted heads. He saw more faces lifted now than lowered. "You want proof?" Crow said, sharp. "You want truth?" He laughed. "Truth's what keeps order." Vivi stepped forward. One step. Enough. "You shot him," she said. The sound of it cut deeper than shouting ever could. Crow stared at her. "Careful." "You shot him," Vivi said again, steady. "Through the window. You said it was mercy. You said mercy had a price." The preacher's book slipped in his hands. "That's a lie," Crow said. He turned to the crowd. "You hear this? Lies from a woman who was tied like an animal," someone else said. Crow's head snapped toward the voice. It was a young man Silas recognized from the mill. He looked surprised at himself. Crow laughed again, but it sounded thinner now. "This is what happens when you let sentiment run the law." Silas felt the moment stretch. He knew better than to believe it would break clean. Crow would not fall because of words. He would fall because of paper, or men, or both. From the back of the square came the sound of wheels. A wagon pushed through, slow and deliberate. The driver did not hurry. He did not ask permission. He stopped where the crowd thinned and climbed down. Rowan Arden did not remove his coat. He carried a wooden case under one arm. "Morning," Rowan said. Crow's smile faltered for the second time. "And you are?" Rowan looked at Vivi. "I'm her brother." The square inhaled. Crow recovered fast. "Convenient." Rowan nodded. "Usually." He set the wooden case on the steps and opened it. Inside were papers, ledgers, folded letters, receipts darkened by age. Beneath them, a wax cylinder wrapped in cloth. Silas felt the ground shift under his boots. "Those are stolen," Crow said. "Some are mine," Rowan replied. "Some are yours." Crow stepped forward. "This isn't the place." "It is," Rowan said. "You made it that way." He lifted a ledger and turned it so the crowd could see the names. Familiar names, familiar amounts, dates that lined up too well to be chance. Murmurs rose, louder now, dangerous. Crow lunged for the case. Deputy Nate moved. It was small, almost nothing. A step sideways, a hand on Crow's arm. "Sheriff," Nate said, "let him finish." Crow stared at him, disbelief flashing before anger swallowed it. "You're relieved." Nate's hand trembled. It did not move. Rowan set the cylinder on the step and fitted it into the player he'd brought. He turned the crank. At first there was only scratch. Then a voice, warped but clear enough, said I owed him. Said mercy ain't free. A woman gasped. Someone crossed themselves. Crow reached for his gun. Nate was faster. The deputy's hand closed over Crow's wrist. Another deputy hesitated, then joined him. The gun clattered to the boards. The sound rang louder than the bell had. Crow struggled. You fools! Silas moved without thinking. He stepped between Crow and the girls. He felt his heart in his throat and kept his hands open. Rowan's voice cut through. There's more! Crow sagged, then straightened, rage burning hot and empty. You think this ends me? No, Rowan said. It ends your silence. The preacher closed his book. I'll testify, Ba Ruth said suddenly. Her hands still shook. I saw the money. I kept quiet. Another voice joined hers, then another. Crow laughed once more, wild now. You'll burn this town down for her? Silas answered before anyone else could. You already did. The deputies cuffed Crow. The crowd parted as he was led away, not with cheers, not with stones, but with a sound like the wind moving through dry grass. Vivi stood very still. The world felt too sharp, too bright. She watched Crow's back until it vanished. Then her knees gave. Silas caught her. He held her this time. Not tight. Just enough. She breathed once, twice, stayed upright. Rowan came to her side. Vivi. She looked at Chuang. Him really looked. And then her face folded. She pressed her forehead into his coat and let the sound out, quiet and broken. Silas stepped back. He did not intrude. The square emptied slowly. People drifted away, heads down, hands busy with nothing. Snow began again, light as ash. When it was over, Silas hitched the wagon without speaking. Rowan rode with them back to the ranch. No one followed. At the gate, Silas stopped. It's not done, Rowan said. I know, Silas said. Inside, the fire still burned. The candle had burned low, but not out. Vivi stood by the window and watched the snow erase the square she'd left behind. The green blanket rested on her shoulders. She tightened it and did not let go. Outside, the road back to town disappeared. Inside, the house held, and somewhere between the two, a choice had been made that could not be taken back. The night came down hard and fast, as if the sky had been waiting its turn. Snow thickened until the fence posts vanished, and the world narrowed to the ranch house and the small circle of light it cast. Rowan slept in the loft, boots by his head, papers tucked beneath his coat. Silas stayed awake at the table, sharpening nothing in particular, listening to the wind test every seam. Vivi sat near the stove with the green blanket around her shoulders. She had not taken it off since the square. She did not intend to. Her hands moved, folding, unfolding, like they were learning a new language. Clary coughed. It was small at first, a dry catch that might have meant nothing. Then it came again, deeper, dragging heat with it. Silas was on his feet before the sound finished. Clary. He knelt by the bed and pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. Heat flared. Too much. Willa sat up at once, eyes sharp. She's burning. Clary's breath came quick and shallow. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Water, Vivi said. Silas moved. Vivi was already there with the kettle, measuring without looking, mixing cool and warm until steam thinned. She wrung a cloth and laid it across Clary's brow. Clary whimpered and turned her face. Willa coughed too. Silas felt the floor tilt. "Both," Willa said, voice steady in the wrong way. "I feel funny." Silas reached for the door. "I'll get Doc." Vivi caught his sleeve. "Not tight. Enough." "No." He looked at her. "The road's gone," she said, "and if you leave, they're alone with me." The truth of it landed. Silas nodded once. He shut the door with his heel and turned back. "Bring them together," Vivi said. "Heat shared lasts longer." They moved the beds without speaking. Clary moaned as they lifted her. Willa clenched her jaw and did not cry. Silas set them side by side and piled blankets high. Vivi worked between them, cloths changed, water sipped when it could be coaxed. The girls' voices drifted in and out, words tangling. "Cold," Willa whispered. "I'm here," Clary said, though she wasn't sure. Vivi's chest tightened. The sound of it, the way fever made children sound small and lost, pulled something loose behind her eyes. She began to hum, not because she planned to, because her body chose for her. 3 notes, a dip, then up again, like a star lifting over black water. The girls quieted. Not fully. Enough. Silas stood at the foot of the beds, useless hands open. He watched Vivi lean in, her shadow falling over the girls like a wing. He watched the way she counted breaths with her thumb against Clary's wrist. He watched the way she did not look away. "I should have kept driving," he thought again, and this time the thought did not cut. It settled, dull and heavy, and stayed. Willa's eyes rolled back. Her mouth moved. "Mama." Vivi's humming faltered. Her breath caught. The room shifted. Images came without asking. Snow not falling. Blowing sideways, biting. A wagon tipped on its side like a dead animal. A woman's hand slack and cold, fingers blue. The sound of wind inside her skull so loud it hurt. 2 small shapes crying. Vivi swayed and caught herself on the bedpost. The memory surged, sharper now, less like a dream and more like a door forced open. She saw herself, coat gone, hands numb, dragging a blanket from the wagon. Green, rough wool. She saw herself wrapping it around 2 children who were not hers. She saw herself singing because silence would let them freeze from the inside out. She remembered lying down beside them, pressing her body against theirs, letting the cold take what it wanted from her as long as it left them breathing. Vivi gagged and swallowed it down. Her hands shook. She did not stop humming. Silas saw her knees bend. He stepped in, steadying her back with his palm. She leaned into the support without looking. "Stay," she whispered. Not to him, to the memory, to the night that had tried to kill them all. The girl's breathing slowed. Sweat broke along Clary's hairline. Willa's jaw unclenched. Vivi sang through it. Her voice went raw and then steadied again. The tune held. Hours passed like that. Or minutes. Time loosened its grip. Near dawn, Clary's fever broke. She sighed, deep and long, and turned onto her side. Willa followed, curling in on herself like a cat finding warmth. Silas sagged against the wall. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, head back, eyes closed. He breathed. He stayed. Vivi sank onto the edge of the bed, spent. Her hands were cold now, the heat having left her for the children. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Silas opened his eyes. "You saved them," he said. Vivi shook her head once. "I remembered." "It's the same thing," he said. Morning came pale and thin. Snow eased to a hush. Rowan climbed down from the loft at first light, took one look, and did not speak. He brewed coffee. He set it where Silas could reach it. Doc Pike arrived mid-morning, breathless and snow-dusted. He examined the girls, nodded once, and let out a long breath he hadn't known he was holding. "They'll be fine," he said. "You did right." Vivi stood at the window, while Doc spoke to Silas. The world outside looked washed clean and unforgiving. She pressed her palm to the glass and felt the cold. Clary stirred and opened her eyes. "Snow lady," she murmured. Vivi turned. Clary's gaze found her and held. "You sang." "Yes," Vivi said. "You stayed," Willa added, eyes half-lidded but sharp. "You didn't leave." Vivi knelt by the bed. "I won't." The words surprised her with their weight. Rowan watched from the doorway. He said nothing. He did not need to. By afternoon, the girls slept naturally, not from fever, but from exhaustion. Silas stepped outside to check the fence. He found no tracks. The night had erased everything. Vivi followed him to the door and stopped there, looking at the land. "I didn't die," she said. Silas nodded. "No." She touched the green blanket. "I chose to stay." Silas looked at the hills, the line of trees, the road that vanished into white. "You keep choosing," he said. She watched the snow lift from a branch and fall. "So do you." Inside, the candle stub from Christmas Eve still stood by the window, burned low but not gone. Vivi moved it closer to the light and set it straight. For the first time since the rope, the memory did not drag her under. It stood beside her, cold and clear, and let her breathe. Outside, the ranch held. Inside, the song rested. And somewhere beyond the trees, a man who had thought himself untouchable counted the ways winter could still reach this house. The thaw did not come. Winter held the land in its fist and did not loosen. Snow hardened into ridges along the fence lines. The road back to town stayed smooth and false, as if it wanted to trick a man into trusting it. Silas worked the ranch like the weather was a creditor. He fixed what could be fixed. He marked what could not. He set wire where wire would slow a horse and bells where bells would speak first. He kept the shotgun by the door and his hands clean. Vivi moved differently now, not lighter, straighter. She washed, mended, taught. She laid out letters on the table and showed the girls how words could be broken into pieces small enough to carry. She labeled jars in a careful hand. She sorted herbs by smell and season. She did not sing unless there was need. Rowan stayed 3 nights. On the 4th morning, he packed his papers and tied them tight. "They won't stop," he said. Silas nodded. "I know." Rowan looked at Vivi. "I'll send word, when I have more." She met his eyes. "I'll be here." Rowan left before noon. The road swallowed him whole. By evening, the first rumor reached the gate. A boy from the mill rode up and would not dismount. He passed the message like it was hot iron. Sheriff's calling a meeting, he said. Sunday, after service. Says it's about order. Silas leaned on the gate. Order's a hungry word. The boy nodded and rode away fast. That night, Vivi packed. She did it without asking, without sound. She folded the green blanket and set it on the bed. She gathered the few things that were hers and tied them with twine. Silas watched from the doorway. You're leaving, he said. I'm not running, she said. I'm making space. For what? For them, she said, and glanced at the girls. Willa heard and stiffened. No. Clary looked up from her book. If you go, he wins. Vivi closed her eyes once. If I stay, he comes here, with paper, with men who say they're just doing their jobs. Silas crossed the room. He did not take the bundle. He did not stop her hands. We'll go together, he said. To the meeting? Yes. Vivi shook her head. He wants me there. He'll have you, Silas said, but not alone. Willa slid off her chair. Front, she said. Silas crouched and met her eyes. If it turns ugly. We don't hide, Willa said. We tell what we saw. Clary nodded. We sing. Silas swallowed. He stood. Then we prepare. They did. Doc Pike came after dark with his bag and a folded paper. He set the paper on the table and did not push it forward. I wrote what I saw, he said. Marks, timing, the way a body looks when a fall isn't a fall. Silas took the paper and read it once. He folded it and placed it under the loose board by the hearth. I'll stand, Doc said, if they ask. They will, Silas said. Ba Ruth came at dawn with a sack of flour and a look like she'd chosen to burn a bridge while standing on it. I saw the money, she said. I took it. I shouldn't have. I will say so. Vivi thanked her, not with words, with bread, warm and plain. Deputy Nate did not come, but a note appeared nailed to the post by the road. 7 o'clock, hall full. Don't come late. Silas burned the note. Sunday arrived gray and heavy. The bell rang like a command. People moved toward town in wagons and on foot. Faces set the way they set for weather they couldn't change. Vivi dressed in the plainest dress she owned. She braided her hair tight. She wrapped the green blanket around her shoulders and tied it firm. She stood straight. You don't owe them anything, Silas said. I owe the truth, she said. That's all. They rode together. The town hall filled fast. The preacher stood near the front, book closed this time. Crow was not there yet. That was the first wrong thing. Silas took a place near the aisle. He kept the girls close. Vivi stood beside him. She did not look for Crow. She looked at the exits. Murmurs moved like mice through the room. He's late. He wants them waiting. He wants it quiet first. The doors opened. Crow walked in without hurry, hat in hand, smile back where it belonged. Deputy Nate followed, pale and rigid. Another deputy brought a stack of papers and set them on the table. Crow raised his hands. The room hushed. Friends, he said, we're here to keep peace. Silas felt the lie settle like dust. Crow turned to Vivi. You've caused division. Vivi lifted her chin. You did. Crow smiled. You'll have your chance. In order. He picked up a paper. Petition to remove a disruptive presence for the safety of the town. A murmur. Heads turned. Silas stepped forward. Who signed it? Crow tapped the page. Enough. Vivi moved too. She placed one foot ahead of the other and stopped. She did not cross the line Crow had drawn in his mind. I will speak, she said. Crow held up a hand. After. Willa tugged Silas's sleeve. Papa. Silas nodded. He felt the room tighten. Crow read names, some known, some not. He read like a man counting cattle. When he finished, he looked up. You see? This is what order looks like. Silas spoke before the preacher could. Order's easy when you don't count the cost. Crow's eyes flashed. Sit down, Mercer. Silas did not. Clary stepped forward. Her voice was small. It carried. She sang to us, Clary said, when it was dark. Crow laughed. Children's stories. Willa took her sister's hand. We were there. The room shifted. Someone near the back crossed themselves. Another man looked at his boots. Crow's smile thinned. Enough. Deputy Nate moved just a step, just enough to be seen. Sheriff, he said, maybe hear them. Crow stared at him. Long. Then he nodded, sharp. Fine. Quickly. Clary hummed. The tune cut the room clean. Heads turned. A woman gasped. A man near the door whispered, That song. Vivi felt the river rise again. She stayed upright. She waited. Crow snapped his fingers. Stop. The humming stopped. Silas felt the floor tilt. He knew then this would not end clean. He knew paper would be used like rope. Crow lifted the stack. We'll vote. A murmur surged, louder now, less certain. From the back, a voice rose. Wait! Rowan Arden stepped through the door, coat dusted with snow, eyes dark with road. Crow froze. Silas felt his heart hit his ribs and stay there. Rowan did not hurry. He walked to the front and set a wooden case on the table. He did not look at Crow. He looked at Vivi. I said I'd come back, he said. Crow found his voice. You're out of order. Rowan opened the case. The room leaned forward. Silas breathed once and held it. Not yet, he thought. Not yet. The winter pressed in on the walls and listened. The room leaned forward and did not sit back. Rowan set the wooden case down and opened it without ceremony. Paper breathed when it met air. Ledgers, receipts, folded letters worn soft at the creases. A small player wrapped in cloth rested beneath them, heavy as a promise. Crow's smile came back by habit and stayed because it had nowhere else to go. You think paper scares me? Rowan didn't answer him. He lifted a ledger and turned it so the room could see the columns. Names ran down the page like fence posts. Amounts lined up neat. Dates fell where dates shouldn't. A murmur rippled. That's forged, Crow said. Rowan nodded. That's what you'll say. Crow stepped closer. This meeting's adjourned. Deputy Nate shifted. Just a step. Enough to be noticed. Sheriff, Nate said, and his voice shook once and steadied. Let him finish. Crow stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. You're relieved. Nate swallowed. He didn't move. Rowan lifted another paper. Protection payments. Feed store. Livery. Mill. He read a name and looked up. You paid. The man flinched. I didn't. Rowan held the paper out. The ink did not argue. Silas watched faces change, not all at once, one by one. Shame moved slower than fear. Crow reached for the case. Silas stepped between them. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't need to. Touch him, Silas said, and you'll have trouble you can't paper over. Crow laughed, sharp and thin. You're bluffing. Try me. The preacher closed his book and set it down. He said nothing. Rowan set the player on the table and fitted the cylinder. His fingers were steady. He turned the crank. Scratch. A hiss. Then a voice, warped by wax and time, but clear enough to carry weight. Said mercy ain't free. Said I owed him. Said keep quiet, or he'd make it worse. A woman gasped. Someone crossed themselves. A chair scraped. Crow lunged for his gun. Nate was faster. Another deputy joined him, hand on Crow's elbow. The gun clattered to the boards. The sound rang louder than the bell ever had. Get off me, Crow shouted. Rowan kept turning the crank. The voice went on, naming nights, naming threats, naming a man who thought himself untouchable. Silas moved without thinking. He stepped back to the girl and spread his hands, open, steady. He felt their breath against his coat. This is a trick, Crow said, breath ragged. You'll burn this town down for a woman? Silas answered before Rowan could. You already did. The words did not shout. They landed. Ba Ruth stepped forward. Her hands shook, but she did not stop. I took the money, she said. I told myself it was for safety. I was wrong. Another voice followed. Then another. Confessions stacked on confession. Not clean, not pretty, but real. Crow sagged. Then he straightened, eyes bright with something close to panic. You think this ends? Me? Rowan stopped the player. No, he said. It ends your quiet. The deputies cuffed Crow. He fought once, then stopped. He looked around the room like a man counting exits that weren't there. Traitors, he said. No one answered. Vivi stood very still. The room felt too sharp, too loud. She watched Crow's back as he was led away. She did not cheer. She did not cry. Her knees buckled. Silas caught her. He held her this time. Not tight. Just enough. He felt her breathe. Once. Twice. She stayed upright. Rowan came to her side. Vivi. She looked at him, really looked, and then her face folded. She pressed her forehead into his coat and let the sound out, quiet and broken, like something finally set down. Silas stepped back. He did not intrude. The hall emptied slowly. People drifted away with their eyes on the floor, hands busy with nothing. Snow began again, light as ash. Outside, the winter waited. They left together. Silas hitched the wagon without speaking. Rowan rode with them, case between his boots, hat low. No one followed. At the gate, Silas stopped. It's not done, Rowan said. I know, Silas said. Inside, the fire still burned. The candle by the window had burned low, but not out. Vivi stood there and watched the snow erase the tracks they'd made. She tightened the green blanket and did not let go. Sunday isn't the end, Rowan said. There are others. Paper reaches far. Vivi nodded. So does truth. Night came down gentle this time. The house held. The girls slept without dreams that clawed. Silas checked the latch and left it unbarred. He set the shotgun where it belonged and washed his hands. He stood by the window and watched the flame. Lord, he thought. Not as a plea, not exactly. Keep this. Outside, the road back to town disappeared again. Inside, the song rested. And beyond the trees, men who had counted on silence learned what winter does to lies when they're left out in the open. Morning came thin and bright, the kind that showed every flaw and did not apologize for it. Silas rose before the light fully settled. He checked the fence, found no cuts, then checked it again. Habit, not hope. The horses stood with their heads low, steam lifting from their nostrils like prayer that didn't need words. Inside, the house breathed easy. The girls slept deep, the kind of sleep that meant no fever, no dreams worth remembering. Rowan sat at the table, papers spread, hands stained with ink and coffee. They'll come quieter now, Rowan said. No bell, no crowd. Silas nodded. Papermen. And men who follow paper, Rowan added. Vivi stood by the stove, sleeves rolled, hair braided neat. She listened without interrupting. When Rowan finished, she set the kettle down and turned. I'll testify, she said. Rowan looked up. It won't be a sermon. It'll be questions. They'll ask to make you small. They tried already, Vivi said. It didn't work. Silas watched her hands. Steady. He felt something ease and something else tighten in its place. They'll ask about the night, Rowan said. Every detail. They'll want cracks. Vivi nodded. I have them. Silas frowned. Cracks? She met his eyes. Cracks let light in. They ate in quiet. The candle stub still stood by the window, blackened wick curled like a hook. Silas moved it aside and wiped the sill clean. By midday, the first visitor arrived. Deputy Nate rode up alone, hat pulled low. He did not dismount right away. He waited, giving the house time to decide. Silas opened the door. Nate took his hat off. Sheriff's being held. Territorial judge is on his way. Could be days, could be weeks. Anyone else? Silas asked. Nate hesitated. A couple men talked last night. Loud enough to be heard. Not brave enough to come here. Silas nodded. They won't. Nate glanced inside, eyes catching on Vivi. Ma'am. Vivi inclined her head. Deputy? Nate swallowed. I'll stand where I can. That's all I can promise. It's enough, Vivi said. Nate nodded once and rode away. That night, the wind shifted. It came from the north, clean and sharp. Snow stopped falling. The land hardened. Silas slept in his clothes. He dreamed of gates that wouldn't close. The knock came after midnight. Not loud, not soft. Careful. Silas was at the door before the second knock finished. He opened it a crack. Two men stood there, faces familiar, not friends, not enemies, neighbors. "We just want to talk," one said. Silas didn't move. "You're talking." The other shifted his feet. "This trouble, it brings eyes." Silas nodded. "Truth does that." "We got families," the first said. "So do I." They stood in the cold, breath steaming. The men looked past Silas, saw the light, the warmth they weren't welcome to. "Maybe she could go somewhere else," the second said. "Just until it blows over." Silas felt his jaw tighten. He kept his voice even. "No." They waited for more. "There's no more," Silas said. The men left. Their boots sounded loud on the frozen ground. Vivi had stood behind him the whole time. She touched his sleeve once. "Thank you." He nodded. "Go back to bed." "I will," she said. She didn't move. "I'm not going anywhere," he added, as if the house needed to hear it. She believed him. Morning brought a letter. Thick paper. Official seal. Rowan read it and set it down. "They want statements. Written, signed." Silas reached for a pen. Vivi stopped him. "Let me." She wrote carefully, words plain and exact. She named times. She named places. She named what was done and what was said. She did not decorate the truth. When she finished, she signed her name without shaking. Rowan folded the letter. "This goes far." "Good," Vivi said. By afternoon, the girls were back on their feet, restless and loud in the good way. Willa practiced tying knots. Clary read aloud, stumbling only once. Silas watched them and felt the weight of the next weeks settle in. He did not push it away. Rowan packed to leave again. He tied the case tight and set it by the door. "I'll come back," he said. "I know," Vivi said. At the gate, Rowan paused. "If they offer a deal, quiet life, no more questions, don't take it." Vivi met his eyes. "I won't." Rowan rode out. The road took him. That evening, Silas and Vivi stood by the fence and watched the light fade. "You could still leave," Silas said, "before the judge comes." Vivi shook her head. "I stayed in the snow so children wouldn't die. I won't run from paper." He nodded. "All right." They stood there, not touching, sharing the cold. "I don't want to belong to anyone," Vivi said. "I don't want to own," Silas said. She looked at him, surprised. Then she smiled, small and real. "That's a start." The bell rang in town, distant and wrong-timed. Not for church, for notice. Silas listened until it stopped. Inside, the girls lit the candle again. Clary tucked the evergreen back under it. Willa straightened it so it stood true. "Papa," Willa said, "will it be hard?" "Yes," Silas said. "Good," she said. "Hard means it matters." Night settled. The house held. Somewhere beyond the hills, men wrote letters and sharpened words. Somewhere else, a judge packed his bag and thought of roads. In the window, the flame burned steady. Vivi watched it and did not look away. "Lord," she thought, not as a plea, not exactly. "Give me the strength to finish what I started." The flame did not answer. It did not need to. The judge arrived with the morning. No trumpet, No prayer. Just a wagon with a cracked rail and a man who stepped down like he'd been born tired and stayed that way on purpose. Silas watched from the fence. He counted the men with him. He counted the space between them. He noticed who stood too straight and who would not meet his eye. Vivi stood beside the house, the green blanket folded over her arm now, not worn. She had chosen that. The judge took off his hat. "I'll hear statements," he said. "I'll hear them clean." The hall filled without being called. People came because staying home would mean choosing something they did not want to name. Crow was brought in last. He looked smaller, not weaker. Smaller. The cuffs had taken the shine off him. He did not look at Vivi. The judge called names. Paper moved. Pens scratched. The sound of it set teeth on edge. Doc Pike spoke first. He did not embellish. He pointed to marks on a diagram and said what they meant and what they didn't mean. He said how a body falls and how it doesn't. He said it once and stopped. Ba Ruth spoke next. Her voice shook. It held. "I took the money," she said. "I told myself it kept my door from being broken. It didn't." The judge nodded. He wrote. Rowan placed the ledgers on the table like bricks. He explained where they came from and how they fit. He did not raise his voice. He did not rush. Crow laughed once. "Stories." The judge did not look up. "You'll have your turn." When it was Vivi's turn, the room tightened. She stood. She did not bring the blanket. She did not need it. She spoke in order. Not the order of pain, the order of time. Night. Drink. Words said more than once. The window. The sound. The price. She did not cry. She did not look at Crow. When she finished, the judge asked one question. "Why didn't you run?" Vivi met his eyes. "Because running makes liars comfortable." Crow surged to his feet. "She's rehearsed." Silas moved without thinking. He stepped between Crow and Vivi, hands open. The deputies closed in. The judge raised a finger. "Sit down." Crow sat. Then the judge asked for the cylinder. Rowan fitted it again. The voice came out warped and plain and damning. The room listened the way rooms do when they know they'll remember. Deputy Nate spoke last. "I saw orders rewritten," he said. "I saw names disappear. I didn't stop it." The judge looked at him. "Why now?" Nate swallowed. "Because children were in the square." The judge nodded. He closed his book. "I'm not finished," Crow said. The judge finally looked at him. "Neither am I." Crow was remanded. Papers were signed. Seals pressed. The sound of it felt final and not enough. Outside, the light had shifted. Snow glittered like ground glass. People filed out slower than they had come. Some looked at Vivi. Some did not. No one spat. Silas hitched the wagon. He lifted the girls up and took his place. Vivi climbed in last. As they pulled away, the hall doors shut. "That's it?" Clary asked. "For today," Silas said. The ranch received them the way it always did, quiet and unremarkable and solid. Rowan packed again. He would not stay, not now. "They'll appeal," he said. They always do, Vivi nodded. Then we answer. At the gate, Rowan paused. You could still end this small. Vivi shook her head. Small keeps happening. That night, the candle burned low again. Silas moved it back to the center of the sill. The house slept. Beyond the hills, men folded papers and planned quiet ways to make noise. Inside, the flame held, and for the first time since the rope, the law felt like something that could be lifted without breaking whoever stood beneath it. The town did not celebrate. It came the next morning in wagons and on foot, slow and unsure, like people approaching a river they had once crossed and now feared. They did not bring banners. They brought sacks, flour, cloth, a crate of apples with frost still on the skins. Silas watched from the porch. He did not wave them in. Ba Ruth came first. She set her sack down and did not look up. I won't ask you to forgive, she said. I'll ask you to let me work. Vivi nodded once. Don't do it again. Ruth swallowed. I won't. Others followed. A man from the mill with a bundle of boards. A woman from the livery with a bolt of wool. They placed things down and stepped back, hands empty, waiting for instruction they did not deserve. Silas let them leave the goods by the fence. He kept the gate shut. Inside, the girls watched through the window. Papa, Willa said, are they sorry? Silas thought of the square, the bell, the papers. They're learning, he said. Vivi moved through the house and did not stop anyone. She thanked no one. She accepted what was offered and stacked it where it would not rot. It was not kindness she was measuring. It was usefulness. By afternoon, the road carried a different sound. A rider came hard from the north. He did not slow at the gate. He reined in short, breath sawing. Message, he said, and handed Silas a folded sheet stamped in red. Silas read it once and passed it to Vivi. She read it without blinking. Appeal, Rowan would have said. Transfer. Delay. They want me in the capital, she said. Silas nodded. They always do. Willa set her jaw. We go. Clary looked up from her book. Together. Vivi folded the paper and set it down. We decide tonight. That evening, Rowan returned. He came alone and late, his horse lathered, his coat dusted white. He set the wooden case on the table and did not open it. They'll stretch this, he strove. They'll make it quiet and long. Vivi poured him coffee. Then it won't be quiet. Rowan studied her face. If you go, you become a witness for more than yourself. She nodded. I know. Silas leaned against the wall. If she goes, she doesn't go alone. Rowan looked at him. You'll lose time, work, maybe land. Silas did not argue. I know. The girls listened from the stairs. I don't want to belong to anyone, Vivi said again, as if testing the room. Silas met her eyes. You don't. Rowan smiled, brief and tired. Good. They planned without ceremony. Routes, dates, who would watch the ranch, what would be carried, and what would be burned. Silas marked the map with a charcoal stub and wiped it clean with his sleeve. Late, when the house slept, Silas sat alone and cleaned the shotgun again. Not because it needed it, but because his hands needed something to do. I should have kept driving, the thought came, softer now. He set the gun aside and went to the window. Snow had stopped. Stars showed, sharp and many. Vivi stood outside, wrapped in the green blanket, watching the sky. "You don't have to," he said, stepping out to join her. She didn't turn. "I'm choosing." He nodded. "So am I." She looked at him then, really looked. "I won't promise you anything." He smiled, small. "I won't ask." They stood shoulder to shoulder, not touching, close enough to share breath. Inside, the girls slept with their doors open. Morning brought work. Silas mended the west fence. Vivi taught the girls to write their names clean and slow. Rowan copied ledgers by the window and burned the scraps. The ranch kept its shape. By noon, a wagon from town arrived with a crate and a note. Silas read the note and set it down. "What is it?" Vivi asked. "An apology," Silas said. "And nails." She nodded. "Keep the nails." The judge returned before dusk. He did not dismount this time. He spoke from the seat. "You'll be summoned," he said. "Soon." Vivi met his eyes. "I'll be there." The judge tipped his hat to Silas. "You run a tight place." Silas nodded. "I try." When the judge left, the air felt thinner. That night, the candle burned again. Clary placed the evergreen beneath it with care. Willa straightened it until it stood true. "Papa," Clary said, "what if they lie again?" Silas thought of paper and men and winter. "Then we tell the truth again." "And if that doesn't work?" Willa asked. "Then we keep telling it," Vivi said. The girls nodded, satisfied. Rowan packed to leave at dawn. He paused at the door. "If they offer you quiet, I won't take it," Vivi said. Rowan smiled. "Good." He rode out. The road took him. The ranch settled. Silas set a new sign by the gate the next day. He hammered it straight and checked it twice. No trespass. Vivi watched him from the porch. "That's a promise," she said. "It's a boundary," he said. She nodded. "Those matter." They stood together as the light shifted and the land held. Somewhere men sharpened words and counted roots. Somewhere else a clerk copied names into a book that would not forget. At the ranch, the candle burned low and steady, and in the quiet that followed, each of them chose again, without witnesses, without applause, what they would carry forward and what they would refuse to leave behind. The road waited. It lay pale and hard beyond the gate, a line drawn through snow that did not care who followed it. Morning came clean, the kind that made leaving feel possible and staying feel costly. Silas loaded the wagon without ceremony. He packed light, tools that earned their place, food enough to be careful with. He left the rest where it belonged. The ranch knew how to stand without him. Vivi folded the green blanket and set it in the chest by the door. Not on top, not hidden, placed. She tied her hair back and buttoned her coat with hands that did not shake. The girls stood close, boots on, scarves tucked. "We're not running," Willa said. "No," Silas said. "We're answering." Clary held up the candle stub from the window. "Can it come?" Silas smiled. It already did its work. They left it where it stood, burned low and honest. Rowan arrived just after dawn, breath fogging, eyes bright with roads ahead. He did not step inside. He did not need to. The summons will travel faster than us, he said. There will be questions meant to wear you down. Vivi nodded. I'll wear them back. Rowan looked at Silas. Once you step past that gate, this won't belong to just you. Silas rested his hand on the post he'd set himself. It never did. They hitched the team. The horses leaned forward, eager and unsure, like all good things about to be tested. At the gate, Silas stopped. Vivi waited. He opened the latch and did not close it again. The wagon rolled. They traveled until the ranch fell into the land, and the land swallowed it whole. The road bent. Wind rose. Snow dusted their tracks and softened the sound of leaving. They did not talk much. There was nothing to explain. At a bend where cottonwoods leaned close, Silas slowed. He looked at Vivi. You can still turn back, he said. She met his eyes. I won't. I won't ask you to stay, he said. I won't promise, she said. They shared a look that held neither demand nor debt. At midday, they stopped by a frozen creek. Silas watered the horses. Rowan checked the papers. The girls skipped stones that did not skip and laughed anyway. Vivi stood at the edge and watched the ice move beneath its skin. She breathed and felt the ground answer. I didn't die, she said again, not to anyone in particular. Silas heard. No. I stayed, she added. He nodded. You chose. She turned to him then, eyes clear. I'll keep choosing. He smiled, small and sure. So will I. They moved on. By dusk, the lights of another town showed low and distant. Not a promise. Not a threat. Just a place where words would be weighed and paper would be read aloud. They camped short of it, fire small, heat shared. Rowan slept with one eye open. Silas took the first watch. Vivi took the second without asking. Night settled. Silas sat with his back to the wagon and thought of the gate left open. He thought of winter doing what winter did. He thought of God the way he always had, present enough to notice, quiet enough to let men choose. I didn't know she'd change everything. The thought came and stayed. Not sharp this time. True. Vivi watched the fire burn down to coals and listened to the girls breathe. She thought of rope and paper and voices that tried to make her small. She thought of a song that had kept children alive. She thought of a choice that did not end when it was made. Morning would come. Questions would come. The road would keep asking. When dawn broke, they would answer again. Not because they had to, because they chose to. And somewhere behind them, a ranch stood with its gate open, holding space for whoever they would be when they returned, or if they did not. The fire went out. The road waited. They rose and met it together.